All right, so for today, we're going to look at Reagan and conservatism. When we're talking about Reagan, we're looking at Ronald Reagan in the 1980s. We kind of talked a little bit last week about Jimmy Carter and how his presidency didn't go so well. And so, because of that, Reagan's going to be nominated pretty easily. So, oftentimes we hear the terms liberal and conservative, but no one's necessarily sure what they mean. I think people know that, like, conservative is typically associated with Republican, liberal is typically associated with Democrat, but what exactly is the difference between the two? So liberals, they tend to think that government should be bigger and really take on more responsibility. So if you don't have enough money to feed your family, you're really poor and can't afford good health care, you lost your job, maybe because it was your own fault or maybe because of circumstances beyond your control. COVID would be a great example of that, with lots of restaurants and businesses closing as a result of the pandemic and everything shutting down. That it really should be government's responsibility to help the people out. So if that means providing food stamps, providing some type of insurance so people can get back on their feet if their business falls, providing Social Security, whatever it may be, government should take on the responsibility of helping out others. Now, in order for government to be able to pay for those things, you have to collect tax dollars. Well, where exactly are you going to get that tax money from? With liberals, they tend to believe that taxing the wealthy is essential to really helping the poor. So someone like a Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, they are all worth billions upon billions of dollars. Why shouldn't they pay more taxes than, say, your local grocery store worker or your small business owner? If you tax on Mark Zuckerberg more, he's not going to notice if an extra billion is gone each year because he's still going to be worth more billions upon billions of dollars. So tax the wealthy to kind of help pay for the programs that are actually going to help the poor. Liberals tend to be more socially liberal, so they'll kind of support things like gay marriage, abortion rights, things like that. Now, conservatism or being conservative is a little bit different. There's a more of a distrust in government and they want to limit its power. For them, they're like, you really can't trust the government with your tax dollars because all it's going to lead to is corruption. Even though the intent might be good of we want to help people in need or we want to help people, that came across some bad luck. Again, a restaurant closing during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the problem is that people are going to rely on government too much and they're going to abuse the system. And they're now going to rely on government to take care of them rather than being able to take care of themselves. So rather than the government sort of helping everybody out, they really should sort of limit who it is that they help and how they are able to actually help people. With conservatives, they believe that the more restrictions you put on people, the more problems it's going to create. So you've heard the phrase like more money, more problems. The idea is if you put too many rules in place, it's going to create too many problems, aka businesses aren't going to want to open because they have all these rules and regulations that they're going to have to follow. There's not going to be enough innovation if you're putting all these rules on people in terms of what they can or cannot do, whatever it may be. And so because of that, they're like, you need to deregulate, aka put less rules or laws on people so that way people are more likely to innovate, create businesses, things like that. They also believe in tax cuts. At the end of the day, no one likes paying taxes. I don't really care who you are. No one wants to pay them. But at the end of the day, we all have to pay taxes. The question is, how much are we going to pay in taxes and what exactly are we going to pay for? With conservatives, they typically want less in taxes. They're like, government should be limited. They shouldn't be providing all these services. Therefore, you should cut taxes and put money back in people's pockets. Now, conservatives, they tend to be more socially conservative, so they're more likely to oppose same-sex marriage, they're more likely to be pro-choice, and most of those beliefs stem from more religious beliefs of marriages between man and a woman, abortion is murder, things like that. Now, like I said, liberals tend to be associated with the Democratic Party. Conservatives tend to be associated with the Republican Party. Is that to say that you can't have conservative liberals or liberal Republicans? Or conservative Democrats, and liberal Republicans. You certainly can, and they do exist. Is that to say that it's talked a lot about in the news? Not necessarily, but it does happen. Even like looking at these two differences, most people are going to look at this and go, okay, I agree with some things on the liberal side, and I agree with some things on the conservative side, which is where most people fall. This idea that you agree with 100% of everything that a candidate says or agrees with, it really doesn't happen for most people. But, because of the way the system is set up, it's okay. These are the two people I have to vote for. I like this guy more than that guy, so I'll just go ahead and vote for them. But people will change beliefs over time. They'll probably change political parties and who it is you do and do not vote for. There are some things you might believe now, and in 10 years you don't believe in them anymore due to experiences or things that happen. But these tend to be like a basic outline of what a liberal might be and what a conservative might be. So Ronald Reagan, when he gets elected in 1980, it's going to be pretty easy for him to win. And part of the reason is because people had grown increasingly frustrated with the Carter administration and really sort of felt like he failed. He runs in 1976 and this idea of you can restore trust in me because I'm going to restore trust in the government. Both the Nixon and Ford administration had left people really upset. Nixon, of course, is going to resign due to the Watergate scandal. You're also going to have his vice president, Spiro Agnew, who's also going to resign due to his own bribery scandal. Ford, of course, ends up acquitting Nixon from, facing any charges whatsoever. So Carter comes in on this idea of, hey, you can trust me. And of course, when Carter came in, the economy was not doing so well. Well, when Carter left, the economy still wasn't great, and he'd had a couple of foreign policy disasters, including the Iranian hostage crisis, where those 52 Americans were captured at the American embassy in Tehran. And fortunately, they were held for 444 days. Carter had tried up until the end of his presidency to try to get them released, but the Iranians waited until Ronald Reagan's inauguration day on January 20th, 1981 to actually release the hostages. And this really was a way to stick it to the Carter administration. They had been upset that the U.S. had taken in the Shah when they really felt that the Shah should face a trial in Iran, but of course it never actually happened. Reagan, when he ran on the idea of he's going to cut taxes and make America feel safer. Again, the Cold War is still going on. The threat of a nuclear war was still a possibility. Again, even things like Miracle on Ice in 1980, it really kind of made Americans feel like, hey, we have an ability to defeat the Soviet Union during the Cold War. One of Reagan's main economic policies, though, or one of the main things he's known for, is supply-side economics or trickle-down economics. It also has the nickname Reaganomics. It really just kind of depends on how you want to refer to it as. But, Reagan sort of felt that there was way too much money being spent in taxes, and again, that money going towards the government. So he was like, okay, we need to cut taxes from large business owners and the wealthy. And the idea was this: if you cut taxes from the super wealthy, that money is going to trickle down to the everyday guy. So if Jeff Bezos is making more money, he's more likely to take the money he's saving and putting it back into his company, which means you're going to hire more people. They're going to get better benefits. They're going to get more wages, whatever it may be. So that's what supply side economics is. It's the idea that money will trickle down if you cut it from the top. Now, does this fix the budget deficit crisis? No, absolutely not. Even though Reagan cut taxes, he never actually cut spending. And so because of that, the budget deficit continues to be greater. Granted, the U.S. has been in debt since 1838, and the only president really in recent history that's even had a balanced budget is President Clinton back in the 1990s. But budget deficit has come up quite a bit, especially this past weekend, looking at the Biden-McCarthy deal and sort of extending the credit line of the United States. But being in debt is not something that's completely unnew for the United States. So a little bit about Ronald Reagan. His presidential library is actually located here in California. It's over in Simi Valley, which is probably about a 2-hour drive from Elsinore, assuming that you hit absolutely no traffic whatsoever. But he was born in Illinois. He's largely associated with California. This is where he lived. He was the governor for 2 terms here. And of course, he was very famously an actor. He used to be the president of the Screen Actors Guild, or SAG. So if you ever watched like the SAG Awards around January, February, he used to be president of essentially that union. He was actually a Democrat when he started out, but ended up switching his political affiliation to be a Republican because he hated communism, and he, hated the Soviet Union, and really kind of was like one of those like Cold War era kids where it was like communism is bad and capitalism is good and so on and so forth. And so because of that, he ends up becoming a Republican. He was very popular during his time. We're actually going to see the Electoral College map here in just a second. A couple of little fun facts about Reagan. He was nearly assassinated about 2 months into his presidency. There was a man by the name of John Hinckley Jr. who decided to kill him. Why? Well, he was in love with the actress Jodie Foster. If any of you have ever seen Silence of the Lambs, you will recognize her. And he was stalking her. He was writing letters to her constantly. And he decided that he was going to try to impress her by killing the President of the United States. One, he did fail in killing Reagan. He ends up surviving the attack, but he also failed in impressing Jodie Foster. Unfortunately for him, which he didn't know, is that Jodie Foster is a lesbian, so he really never stood a chance with her to begin with. He ends up going to a mental institution. He was found guilty by reason of insanity, and he's actually currently out. He officially got out like a couple of years ago from the mental institution, and you can actually find a YouTube channel of him, John Hinckley Jr. He makes his own music and is currently looking for a record label to distribute distribute it. So kind of a little fun fact about that. And then Ronald Reagan was a huge jelly beans guy. Pretty much every table in the White House and meetings, he'd always have a thing of jelly beans there for people to snack on because it was one of his favorite candies. So like I said, Ronald Reagan was really well liked and very popular during his time. In that 1980 election, this is what the Electoral College map looked like. It kind of should remind you of FDR's in the 1930s, when, again, people were so frustrated with Hoover that they really just went and voted for FDR in droves. The same thing is going to happen for Reagan as well. He's not as quite close to the majority as FDR was in the 1930s, but pretty darn close here. And again, you can see overwhelmingly he won the Electoral College in the United States. So what are some of the things that Reagan ended up doing? Well, of course, he did end up cutting taxes. Again, he was like, we're collecting way too much in tax dollars. We have to do something. So cutting taxes was definitely one of Reagan's big things. But again, he never actually cut spending. He's also going to have the opportunity to nominate a few judges to the Supreme Court that end up getting confirmed. Of course, they tend to be more conservative judges since he is more conservative. One of the people that he nominated was Sandra Day O'Connor, and she actually becomes the first woman to be nominated and appointed to the Supreme Court. In total, the Supreme Court's only ever had 6 women on the court, and currently 4 of them are there. Yes, so 4 of them there. So the 6 women that have been nominated to the court in the past 40 years, 4 of them are currently serving on the court. Antonin Scalia, also another very famous Supreme Court justice, was nominated and confirmed under the Reagan administration. Deregulation was also another one of Reagan's big things that he did. Again, he felt that the more rules that government had on people, the less likely the economy was to boom. If you have too many rules, then people don't really feel a need to want to start their own businesses, be innovative, whatever it may be. So he really did a lot of deregulation, whether it was the oil industry, chemical industry, things like that. Some environmentalists were very critical of that, saying like, hey, you have to take care of the environment as well. This idea that you're just going to drill wherever doesn't necessarily work, but that really just kind of comes down to you and your personal beliefs. And under the Reagan administration, stagflation is going to come into an end in 1983. Again, that's a combination of high unemployment as well as inflation. And after that, the economy is going to boom. The stock market's doing quite well. Again, the stock market's kind of a sign that the economy is well. And if people feel that the economy is doing well, they're more likely to spend money. You get a ton of technological innovations during the 1980s. The Walkman, of course, is going to be created. This is huge because by the 1990s, that then leads to the CD or portable players. Early 2000s, you get the iPod, and now today, pretty much all of you listen to music on your phones. VHS and VCRs are also going to be created during the 1980s. So you guys don't know this or probably remember because you guys all have DVRs, so you can pause live television. But back in the day, you have to have like a blank of VCR or VHS tape, and you'd put it into the VCR. And if you wanted to watch a show, you'd have to tell someone like start recording at 7:58, so that way you can watch your show at 8 o'clock, and you can fast forward and rewind because the ability to just have something drop into a streaming site or pause live TV didn't exist back then, or to have something in like your library. So, tons of technological innovations. Pac-Man gets created in the 1980s. Arcades, we've talked about a Blockbuster, MTV, lots of those different things. And so a lot of this innovation is going to lead to more of a booming economy because people are more likely to invest. They're more likely to buy things. The more you buy, the more you sell, the better the economy is going to do. And of course, Reagan, just like pretty much every president before him, through Truman, of course, had to deal with the Cold War in the Soviet Union. So Reagan, of course, had funded the rebels in Afghanistan to fight the Soviet Union. This had started in the Carter administration in 1979, and this is going to continue through 1989 when the Afghan rebels are basically able to defeat the Soviet Union. Reagan, like everyone else, knew that you had to deal with the Soviet Union and nuclear missiles. So again, this threat of a nuclear war could happen at any time was still a real threat even under Reagan. But Reagan, kind of like some of his predecessors, was like, this is a little ridiculous. This idea that we're going to sit here and wait to get nuked doesn't really sort of make a whole lot of sense. So in the early 80s in his administration, he had actually tried to approach the Soviet Union of, let's make a deal here. Let's find a way to reduce nuclear weapons. Well, the Soviet Union refused, and this really pissed Reagan off. So he's like, okay, if you're not going to make a deal with me to, try and get rid of these nuclear weapons, then we've got to do something for America to try to make sure that we are protected. Because the way it worked was that people had nuclear missiles, but there was no way to intercept a missile if one came towards you. So Reagan was like, why don't we create something that if the Soviets were to launch a nuclear weapon to try to nuke the U.S., we should be able to capture that. And that becomes known as the Star Wars mission. And then when Mikhail Gorbachev, who becomes the last leader of the Soviet Union, takes over in 1985, he reaches out to the Reagan administration. He's like, hey, we got to kind of come up with a more peaceful world or a more peaceful solution. So they're going to sign the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, or the INF Treaty. And what this did was this got rid of certain nuclear weapons, ones that might be considered more deadly than others. And this really will remain in place until 2019, which at that point both the U.S. and Russia have pulled out of it. The reason that the U.S. pulled out of it was because Russia wasn't abiding by it anymore. Putin's been very open about the fact that he really kind of wants to return the area surrounding Russia into the old Soviet Union, and so because of that, he's not willing to sort of play nice even when it comes to nuclear weapons. But one of the big things that Reagan kind of helps to oversee during his administration is going to be the ending of the Cold War, and in 1987, he gives this very famous speech.
General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
So the gate that Reagan is referring to is that Brandenburg Gate, and this really signaled that you were in Berlin. And again, the city had been divided since the early 1960s when the Berlin Wall was built, separating West Berlin being capitalist and East Berlin being communist. Of course, the wall that he's talking about is the Berlin Wall, and this speech was made in June of 1987. About 2.5 years later, the wall actually starts to get torn down, and about 4.5 years after the speech, the Soviet Union officially collapses, thus ending the Cold War.